A few housekeeping notes for everyone. As this is a webinar, attendees do not have camera or microphone capabilities, so no need to worry about turning those on or off. Dr. Allison is happy to entertain questions for discussion throughout his presentation, so please feel free to submit them as they come up via the chat box at the bottom of the screen. You're also welcome to share any thoughts you have in relation to his comments via chat. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Scott Allison, University of Richmond, Professor of Psychology. Scott Allison has authored numerous books, including Heroes and Heroic Leadership. He is Professor of Psychology at the University of Richmond, where he has published extensively on heroism and leadership. His other books include Real Heroes, Conceptions of Leadership, Frontiers in Spiritual Leadership, and the Handbook of Heroism. His work has appeared in USA Today, National Public Radio, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Slate Magazine, MSNBC, CBS, Psychology Today, and the Christian Science Monitor. He has received Richmond's Distinguished Educator Award and the Virginia Council of Higher Education's Outstanding Faculty Award. I'll pass it over to Dr. Allison now.
Thank you very much, Rhonda, and I'm so honored and pleased to be here today. I have been told I have about 40 minutes to cover an entire year's worth of material. So I'm going to do my best to get through a lot of issues. And please do, if you have any questions, use the chat function. And I can't promise I'll get to every question, but I will do my best. This is a big topic, and we're going through very unusual, unprecedented times. We're in uncharted waters. And all of us have been, I hate to use a cliche, but we've been thrown out of our comfort zones and into new unfamiliar territory. And so we're all challenged right now, every one of us, including myself. So I'm gonna share my screen. I have some slides, and I'm gonna now share my screen and go through my PowerPoint. And we'll start with the title, Maintaining Psychological Well-Being in the Time of the COVID Epidemic. And one of you joked that you've never had any well-being to begin with, so how can you maintain something you never had? Well, we're going to do our best to get through all that. But let's begin with a brief outline of what I want to talk about today. And the outline includes, well, what is well-being? Let's define what it is. And let's talk about how it's changed, if it's changed during this pandemic. And then we'll get to the meat and potatoes of achieving well-being, trying to reach some sort of sense of happiness and well-being in this pandemic, which involves acknowledging our losses. I think being right up front about being real about what's happened to us is very important. Gratitude, letting go, self-care, the 3 A's, which I will explain and when we get there. It's awareness, acceptance, action, resilience, and then service to others. I think this is how we begin to put a dent into that thing called well-being, which psychologists define as the experience of health, happiness, and prosperity. So think about health, happiness, and prosperity right now. If it was challenging before this coronavirus, imagine how challenging it is now. Well, you are experiencing how challenging it is right now. So health, happiness, and prosperity, how do we get to well-being? Through good mental health practices, a sense of life satisfaction, a sense of meaning or purpose, and the ability to manage stress. So the theme for today, and I think this is very important, the theme is being gentle with ourselves and being gentle with others. We're going through hard times right now. All of us are struggling, and some more than others. And so practicing gentle compassion for ourselves and for other people, I think is so important right now. So there's this phrase from Wizard of Oz, we're not in Kansas anymore. None of us are in Kansas anymore. We're in uncharted territory. So this phrase, "we're not in Kansas," means we've stepped outside of what's considered normal. We've entered a place or circumstance that is unfamiliar and uncomfortable, and we found ourselves in a strange situation. So think about what we're talking about here: abnormal, unfamiliar, uncomfortable, strange. So no wonder we're feeling out of sorts, and that's another reason to be gentle with ourselves. Okay, you've seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs probably, and there have been some memes on social media about what this pandemic has done. It's created a toilet paper shortage. Now, I don't know about you, but we've got toilet paper and paper towels in our stores now. But early on, uh, toilet paper was the primary need, jokingly, maybe not so jokingly. But the idea here is that we're we're back to trying to meet basic needs. If before the pandemic we were thinking about becoming our best selves, our highest selves, uh, reaching our full potential, finding that ideal romantic partner, if we had all of these lofty goals before the pandemic, what this disease, this virus has done is kind of all humbled us, thrown us back down to earth, knocked us down a pedestal or a peg or two, to where we're now just trying to meet basic safety needs, basic security needs, basic biological needs. So you may have seen this on social media that we're not up at the top levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs anymore, where we've got lofty, higher level goals. Now we're now trying to meet basic needs. So here's a few things to keep in mind. Each one of us is different. And by that, I mean, each one of us uh, is experiencing this pandemic in a different way. We're all different. There are individual differences in our background, how we were raised, our conditioning, early childhood conditioning, what emotional scars we may have from our past. There's differences in temperament. Some people are introverted, some people are extroverted. And I've heard that introverts are having an easier time than extroverts, which I don't buy that, by the way, but you hear that introverts have found staying at home to be easier. We all have different resources at our disposal, resources, financial or emotional resources. Some of us, religion, some of us have religion to help us through this crisis. Some of us don't have religion or aren't religious. And we all have different levels of social support and social networking. So we're all different in terms of how we respond. We're responding to this virus, the pandemic, and how we're coping with it. So back to our well-being outline. What can we do? And I want to start with, because I'm a psychologist and I don't like denial, I don't like repression and denial. I think being upfront, being transparent, being very open, and dealing with reality is very important. That acknowledging our losses, I think, is really important. That we don't sugarcoat what's going on, that we acknowledge that we've lost a lot of things, and some people have lost a lot more than others. Um, each one of us has been affected, adversely affected by this pandemic. So let's get real and acknowledge the reality of that there's a loss in our health. People are sick or dying. Maybe we know people who have been sick or have died from this virus. There's been a loss of income, a loss of people's livelihoods. The economic fallout from this is enormous. A loss of social connection. I really miss being hugged. I miss hugging my friends, seeing my friends. There's a real loss in that social fabric of our society. A loss of our freedoms, a loss in our routines that we grew comfortable with, the loss of a predictable future. There's a lot to grieve right now. These losses are real. And I really encourage us to acknowledge that and to feel it. I think feeling our feelings is very important. And you know what? Look at this slide. It's okay to cry. I think it's healthy to cry. I think we need to cry. And let me tell you this, if you are religious at all, if you believe in a God, In my opinion, you're never closer to God than when you cry. Crying brings us as close to God than any other activity. If you're not religious at all, then there's a whole science behind the benefits of crying. Crying is good for us. It soothes us. Science has shown that it has a soothing, calming, comforting effect on us. To cry communicates to people that we need support. So there's this supportive communication function of crying. It signals to people that we need help. Crying actually has been shown to relieve pain. It actually improves our mood. It releases toxins. In the tears, there are toxins that are being removed. It reduces stress, crying does. It helps us sleep. It fights bacteria, improves our vision, and it improves our vision physically because it's clearing our lenses, but it also improves our vision metaphorically. We're able to see the world more clearly, I think, after a good cry. So again, being your typical touchy-feely psychologist, I give you all permission to cry, and I hope you are crying. And the interesting thing about crying is it's not something you pencil in your calendar. You don't schedule crying to occur 2 o'clock on Tuesday. I think I'll just decide to cry at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. Crying happens when it's going to happen. It happens when it's supposed to happen, when it's meant to happen. And it's okay. All right, the practice of gratitude. And this is a challenge even before the pandemic. Gratitude, for some reason, doesn't come naturally to people. But there is this thing called gratitude therapy. Gratitude therapy exists to help bring out the benefits of feeling grateful. And we know there is a whole science of gratitude that positive psychologists have illuminated in the past 10 to 15 years. And according to science, gratitude and people who practice gratitude regularly are happier people. They have more positive emotional experience. They feel more alive. They sleep better. They have more compassion for the world, and they're kinder and more generous people. And it actually boosts your immune system. Gratitude does. Gratitude is amazing. It's an attitude of gratitude. So I encourage all of you, if you're not already doing it, to practice keeping a gratitude journal and to write and reflect on things that you have, from most basic things like water to a roof over your head to more higher level things like friendships and love that you may have in your life. Because if you keep a gratitude journal, that's going to improve your well-being and your life satisfaction. And it's a great social exercise. I really encourage you making this a social exercise, and that means finding a gratitude partner, finding someone who you maybe every day exchange a gratitude list with. That's very helpful. So use your chat function right now. I want to see you to chat, type something right now. If you like to, you don't have to, but I'd like right now to see some people tell me using the chat function what you're grateful for right now. What are you grateful for today? Someone just wrote for sun and warmth. Someone wrote nature. Someone wrote family. Oh, I love this. Nature, sun, family, being safe at home with family. Amazing weather. I love it. This seminar, warmer temperatures, spending time with family, health, friendship, knowledge, family and friends who check in on me, being able to walk outside in the warm weather, being able to look outside your window from your workspace, the warm breezes, plenty of farmer fresh food. This is cool. See, this is great. Being grateful for people, for friends, for puppies. Oh, someone's grateful for a puppy. I love it. Dogs. Are there any cat people who are grateful for cats? Uh, hot baths. That's cool. A hot bath. I love that. Hospital staff. Someone did write cats. Thank you. I'm very much pro dog and pro cat. I'm all inclusive in the pet family. Um, so this is great. Flowers. I'm so glad that you typed in these gratitudes because they made me feel better. Because I agree with all your gratitudes and they bring warmth to my heart. They fill my heart. And I think right now, finding ways to fill up that heart space, to see the good in the world, to see silver linings in the world, is something that's very good for us right now. And it has a contagious effect, that attitude of gratitude. If we feel it and we express it to others, then they feel it and we get this ripple effect of positive energy. Thank you for that. Okay, here's another practice that philosophers, psychologists, Buddhists, Christians, people from all traditions, they all endorse the idea of letting go of stuff we cannot control. This whole idea of letting go is very powerful. Um, Human beings by nature are control freaks. And let me tell you, being a control freak kind of has a bad rap. Uh, all of you listening to this webinar right now are successful in life, have been successful, because you're very good at taking control of doing what needs to be done, at rolling up your sleeves and making things work, of overcoming stuff. You're all good at seizing control, taking control. You want control, and you've done good things throughout your whole life by being control freaks. And I don't mean control freak in a bad sense. I mean being a very effective controller of your environment, of your life. However, now that we're in this horrible pandemic, we have to practice letting go of control. There's so much out there going on that we're powerless over. There's so much stuff going on. The politics of all of this, the extent of the virus, the contagiousness of the virus, the economic turmoil. There's so much stuff we're powerless over. We have to let it go. We are not designed to save the world. None of us individually has the power to wave our magic wands and fix the world, rescue the world, save people. We have to let go of this stuff. Doesn't mean that we're totally powerless over everything, but there's a lot of stuff we are agonizing over right now. There's a lot of stuff that's hurting our souls right now, that's hurting us emotionally right now, they are burdens that we're not meant to carry. And so I love this serenity prayer, and you probably all heard of the serenity prayer. You don't have to be religious to appreciate the genius, the wisdom of the serenity prayer, because it asks God, or asks the universe. If you want to be more secular, you're asking the universe to help give me serenity so I can make some decisions. So you're asking for serenity to make some decisions. What are the things I can change and what are the things I cannot change? So we ask a higher power to help us accept the things that we can't change. And we ask for the courage to change the things we can. And we ask for the wisdom to know the difference between those two things. And to me, this is genius. This is brilliant. And it's easier said than done. And you can spend a whole lifetime accumulating the wisdom of knowing go and when you have control. And it turns out we have control over a lot less than we think we do. But the good news is we do have control over our attitudes. We can control our attitudes. We can control our behaviors. We can control our mindsets. So we have actually a lot of control over what we think, feel, and do. But can I solve the crisis, this pandemic? No. Do I have any control over politicians? No. I'm pretty powerless over a lot of stuff. I can vote. If I'm unhappy with the politics going on, I can vote. So there is something I can do in that regard. But a lot of stuff that I agonize over, a lot of stuff that I'm frustrated about and unhappy about and sad about, are things I'm powerless over. And letting go it's a psychological practice and it's a spiritual practice. And I'm a big believer that psychological principles and spiritual principles go hand in hand. And the Serenity Prayer is an example of that. All right, self-care. What is self-care? I've broken self-care down to 4 areas, and there's probably more than that, but for the sake of simplicity, self-care involves taking care of myself physically. Again, I have control over what I eat, how much I sleep, how much I exercise. So here's things I can control. Self-care practices like taking physically good care of myself, taking good emotional care of myself. So hugging the people I can hug, saying telling people I love you, family and friends. I think the world needs more love right now, and expressing it physically and verbally is very important. And crying, I put down crying as emotional self-care. I'm a big believer in that. Spiritual self-care, prayer, meditation, a gratitude list, being out in nature. And I noticed when you told me what you were grateful for in the chat box, a lot of you put nature. And this is a very special time of year to be out in nature. And if there's a silver lining from this pandemic, the silver lining is we're getting outside more. I've seen more people taking walks, going outside, exploring neighborhoods, exploring the park. And here in Richmond, we have the James River. I've seen more people along the river practicing good social distancing. But there seems to be a greater appreciation of nature now that our lives have been put on hold by this pandemic. And that's a spiritual practice, being out in nature. Psychologically good for us, emotionally good for us, spiritually good for us. And then the 4th area of self-care is intellectual self-care, improving ourselves mentally, reading a book, learning a new skill, developing a new hobby. Now, there's other kinds of self-care that you may want to add to this: socially, connecting people socially, professionally. Maybe there's ways you can professionally better yourself. But these are 4 core elements of self-care that right now, more than ever, doing some basic things to get through the day and to keep ourselves in right mind, body, and spirit. I think that not enough can be said about practicing good habits of self-care. Sometimes, maybe this is the ultimate gift of self-care, is not following the news very closely. I found that the more news stories I follow, the more news I watch, or the more news I read online, the worse I feel. So I've made it my goal to watch just enough news to stay informed, but no more than that, to limit my news intake, because it can be very damaging to my well-being to be involved in the drama of social media, the drama of news stories, the drama of the political divide in our country. So I think monitoring and limiting how much poison and toxin there is in on the internet and in the news and social media is very important. All right, let's get to the 3 A's. I love the 3 A's, and they are awareness, acceptance, and action. Very simple, and they occur in that order. Awareness comes first, then acceptance, and then action. Now, you don't want to skip any steps, because when you get to the action part, you want to take appropriate action, and you cannot take appropriate actions during this time unless you've practiced awareness and proper acceptance. And these 3 A's, I think, are especially helpful if you're suffering emotionally right now. If you're emotionally sad, if you're emotionally frustrated, angry, anxious, if you've got a lot of fear or sadness, the 3 A's are very helpful in having a calming influence on us all. So, and if you have any kind of struggle with dark emotions, I recommend the 3 A's as a starting point to help collect yourself emotionally. and do something that's healthy about your emotions. So awareness, I think, first of all, being aware of what we're feeling is very helpful. Knowing what kind of emotion you're feeling is important. Some people struggle. They feel bad, but they don't know in what ways they feel bad. And I think it's important that we identify what kind of negative emotion we're feeling. And research has shown, there's good science out there showing that the more able we are, the better able we are to identify specifically which bad emotion we're feeling, the better off we are in being able to handle and manage that negative emotion. So awareness of what we're feeling and sitting with the feeling and just being aware of it, just noticing it, being aware of the present moment, being aware of what you're feeling in the present moment, not judging yourself at all, turning off the brain, the mind, the storytelling that can get us into negative stinking thinking, I think is important, just to be aware without judgment, and to be aware of what you're feeling, and to breathe, and to notice your breath, and to notice what you're sensing. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? Uh, this is all very important in terms of promoting psychological well-being. One of my best friends, who is a clinical psychologist, tells his clients who tend to overthink things, overthinking is a problem. He tells them, lose your mind, come to your senses. Lose your mind, come to your senses. Okay, the second day is acceptance. And practicing acceptance it doesn't mean we approve of the situation. It doesn't mean we like what's going on. It just means that we accept what's going on, or we accept that we cannot do anything about what's going on. So accepting our life situations, accepting our feelings, accepting whatever emotions we're experiencing is a big part of our healing and our ability to cope with stress and negative emotions. So again, acceptance is simply acknowledging that this is going on. It doesn't mean we like it. It just means we accept it. So we accept that there's a pandemic and that the world has changed. We accept our feelings, and we accept that our feelings aren't facts, they're just feelings, and that they're perfectly normal and natural. Believe me, I would worry more about y'all if you were all doing great right now than if you were struggling. So struggle is normal. If you've been hurting and struggling, you are a human being, and you are a human being that I respect and admire and feel compassion for. I'm very suspicious of anyone who's doing great right now. And I actually have a couple friends who, when I ask them how they're doing, they say, I'm doing great. And, maybe they are doing great, but this doesn't seem like a great time to be doing great. But again, I don't want to judge. I know that I'm challenged, and I know my friends are challenged, and it's normal to be challenged. We can all accept it. Accept that it's going on. Accept that this is what we're feeling. Also accept that emotions run their course. They're temporary. Emotions, our feelings pass. Accepting the things I cannot control, which can be what's going on in the world, and I'm accepting also my feelings. I can't turn off my negative feelings. That's something I can work on accepting. Sometimes I have to accept that I'm having trouble accepting. So how's that for meta acceptance? I have trouble accepting. Accepting that I have trouble accepting is the first step toward acceptance. All right, now the third A is actions. Only after I've practiced awareness and practiced acceptance can I take appropriate actions. So what are appropriate actions? Sometimes doing nothing is perfectly fine. Just sitting and waiting, being patient, and listening to what you feel called to do eventually. Being patient and waiting is an excellent strategy. We don't always have to be doing something. Sometimes doing nothing is the right action. I highly recommend journaling or talking to somebody. We are not meant to travel this journey alone. We are all here for each other. Human beings were designed to be in groups. We're wired to need social connection and to thrive on social support. So talking to people or journaling our feelings, any kind of verbal expression, whether it's written or oral, is very healthy. Um, be creative. If you're a singer, sing. If you're a musician with an instrument, play that instrument. If you're a writer, write. Maybe your gift to the world is listening. Sometimes just being there to listen to someone, being there to listen is the greatest gift we can give someone. Exercise is a great action to take. Um, again, being gentle. I think gentleness and love for ourselves and for others is the greatest gift we can give ourselves and other people at this time. All right, resilience. And we have about 5 more minutes and then I'm going to stop. Resilience is one of those things you cannot just decide, well, I'm going to decide to become resilient today. You don't choose to be resilient. Resilience happens to you as a result of going through tough times. So whether you know it or not, you are all in the process of becoming more resilient. This very minute, as we speak, all of you are growing in your resilience. And you may not feel like it right now, and that's okay. So resilience means using your negative emotions, not to beat yourself up, but using them to be constructive. So sometimes people who are angry will then go exercise. So there's an example of using a negative emotion constructively. So when I'm angry, I'm going to go do sit-ups and push-ups, or I'm going to go running, or I'm going to go speed walking, or whatever exercise you do. That's a good way to channel your anger. If you're anxious, maybe anxiety is what you're suffering from. To me, the perfect antidote to anxiety and helps build resilience is reaching out to people. It's funny how when we comfort other people's anxiety, it reduces our own anxiety. The growth mindset. All of us have a growth mindset. And that is the mindset that we are all capable of growing, of becoming better people. In fact, we know from research that human growth and evolution and transformation is lifelong, that all of us are engaged in lifelong learning and growing. And I know you don't want to hear this. In fact, I don't even want to hear this, that suffering and setback is the best way to grow. It's like an opportunity. And I hate that. I just hate saying it. I hate hearing it, but it's true. We do not grow when we're comfortable. We only grow when we're thrown into discomfort. Oh, I hate that. But let's keep that in mind, that struggle brings strength more often than not. Seeking out healthy mentors, being of service to people, looking for silver linings, being optimistic. Now, optimism, here's what research says about optimism. Optimism, people who are optimistic handle adversity better than people who are pessimistic. I have a friend who's a pessimist and he says it helps him prepare for the worst. No, that's not what the research says. The research says that pessimists do worse with adversity and setback. Optimists handle adversity better. Post-traumatic growth. We don't hear enough about post-traumatic growth. We hear way too much about PTSD, and I don't mean to diminish the seriousness of PTSD. PTSD is real, and it's a horrible thing to have. But let's be clear. Most of us, that's my Alexa. Most of us are capable of PTSD, which most of us are capable of growing from trauma, not succumbing to trauma. In fact, 80% or more of us grow into better people than we would have been had the trauma never happened in the first place. That's the transformative value of trauma is that most of us, most of the time, grow and transform and become stronger, more metamorphosized people having had the trauma than we would had we never had the trauma. So post-traumatic growth is a real thing, and most of us grow from trauma. So keep that in mind when it comes to resilience. Being kind to others. So science now shows that we benefit from kindness. There's a science to kindness that shows that people who are kind and generous live longer. People who are kind are happier. People who are kind and generous and are of service to others experience less physical pain, less emotional pain, have lower blood pressure, have more sense of meaning and purpose, inspire others to be kind. It's contagious. Kindness is contagious. So one of the best things you can do if you're feeling down in the dumps is to reach out and cheer someone else up. Because when you cheer someone else up, you're cheering yourself up. Now, I study heroes and heroism, and Jamie Katz just wrote something to me in the chat box, and uh, she was in my heroes class, and what we know, and what Jamie knows, and some of you, others of you who've had me as a teacher, is that we're all on the hero's journey. The human journey is the hero's journey. And what do we know about the human journey and the hero's journey? Is that all of us were designed to handle struggle. We were made for this. We're prepared for this. Yes, this pandemic sucks. Yes, it's awful. People are suffering. It's not a good time for many people, for ourselves. But let's not lose sight of the fact that this is all part of the journey. Let's all remember that comfort is not the growth zone, that no growth ever happens when we're comfortable, that we need setback and struggle in order to move forward, to become better people. Here's another thing, being humbled. I don't think many of us love being humbled. It means we've been knocked down to earth, we've been knocked down a peg. But being humbled, there's a whole research, there's a whole science of humility. And one of the things it shows is that when we're humbled, it opens up our heart space. When we're humbled, it opens up our hearts to loving, and it opens us up to learning. So we're made more receptive to learning and to growing and to loving ourselves and to other people. That's the gift of being humbled. And all of us are being humbled right now. So you can look at it as a gift. The hero of every story gets help from others. If you're struggling right now, reach out to people, ask for help. There's no weakness in needing help. In fact, I think asking for help is a strength, it's not a weakness. And helping others is what we're called to do as well. All of us are called to help and to be there for each other. All of us are being transformed right now, whether you know it or not, whether you're aware of it or not. This is a time of liminal space, a time when we're all being thrown into the fire, and we are learning and growing as we speak. It's happening. And the idea now, and what I call all of you to do, is to trust the process. Just trust that it's happening. Trust that the world is healing. Trust that you are healing. Trust that there's good going on behind the scenes. Trust that there's good that will come out of all of this. That society will become a better society. That people are all going to learn and grow from this. That there's always good at the other side of adversity. All right, now here's a poem I want to read to end. I'm ending with this. And by the way, this is not a poem. This is prose. Joanna Macy is a Buddhist philosopher, and she wrote this in prose, and to me, it screamed as a poem. So I broke it down as a poem because I think it's more powerful as poetry. Because I think poetry touches our heart as well as our minds and our heads. So I'm going to read it as a poem it's called It Turns, which is the title I gave to it because that's a phrase in here. And It Turns is about growth and transformation. So let me read this aloud, and I hope it speaks to you as it speaks to me. It Turns by Joanna Macy. We are called to not run from the discomfort and not run from the grief or the feelings of outrage or even fear. If we can be fearless to be with our pain, it turns. It doesn't stay static. It only doesn't change if we refuse to look at it. But when we look at it, when we take it in our hands, when we can just be with it and keep breathing, then it turns. It turns to reveal its other face. And the other face of our pain for the world is our love for the world, our absolutely inseparable connectedness with all life. And I'm going to stop right there and take questions you may have, or any observations you may have. Maybe you have some thoughts you want to share. Maybe you have some experiences you want to share about your own journey through this lockdown, this quarantine, this pandemic. And while I'm waiting for you to use the chat box, someone asked, does online therapy work? Sometimes, maybe right now, online therapy is the only therapy available. And the answer is yes. So look at these studies on your screen that speak to the science of the effectiveness of online therapy. So online therapy is effective treatment. It's been shown to work. So if you need professional help, there are online therapists in your area, and it does work. Thank you, Heather, for that nice comment. I appreciate it very much. So someone is asking, is there a psychological reason why so many people, myself included, are having more vivid dreams during this time? Yes, there's articles about that, about how people are dreaming more and remembering their dreams more now more than ever. And I think when we're dreaming, our unconscious impulses are running wild, unchecked, and one of the functions of dreaming, our nighttime dreaming, one of the purposes and functions of dreaming is to help us process what's going on in our waking life. And let's face it, there's a lot more to process in our waking lives than there was just a few months ago. So we're dreaming more now, and we're remembering our dreams more because they're more vivid, because there's a hell of a lot more to process right now at night. So our brains are actually healing and figuring things out at night through our dreams, and we're processing things at night. So that's why we're dreaming more. There's just a lot more going on, and there's a lot more stuff that's on our emotional plate, our mental plate, that our brains we're processing on at night. Thank you, Suzanne and Susan. I'm not even sure this is being recorded or not. Maybe Rhonda, you can let us know if this is being recorded. You're very welcome. I'm getting some thanks. I appreciate the thank yous. Maybe there's a way for my slides to be made available to people. I don't know, Rhonda, if there's a way that these slides can be sent to the participants in this webinar. I'm happy to share them with people. Someone has asked if there's any sort of silver lining to the pandemic, and I think a lot of silver linings are yet to be revealed. But one of them I did mention, and that is we're getting out in nature more. Perhaps we're connecting more with family. I know that parents are with their children more, so there's more time spent with family, which is a silver lining. Great. Looks like Rhonda has said that we can share my slides. I'm glad to hear that. And that's great. It looks like it's been recorded as well. So if anyone finds this useful, the recording will be made available. All right, Natalie has asked, do you have any recommended books or movies with a similar theme as It Turns? or motivating moving materials to help with these cathartic cries that you mentioned? Oh, this is such a great question about movies and books. And in fact, I invite all of you to answer that question with me. Do any of you listening right now have reading materials that speak to Natalie's question about, are there books or movies with this theme of transformation and using struggle and adversity to help transform us? And Natalie, I'm going to give that some thought. And I think you and I are Facebook friends. I know I have your email as well. Let me get back to you on that. That's going to take a little thinking on my part. Thank you for sharing, Anne and Susan and others. I'm so glad that you were here today. It really means a lot to me that you were here and listening, and I'm glad you found some of this beneficial. Maybe we can do it again sometime. Maybe I can give another webinar later, some future date. But I'm glad to be of some help. And remember, we're all in this together. So reach out to people as much as you can. We're all here to comfort and console each other and to offer encouragement. Oh, good. Keiki just wrote that there's a book of poetry by Louise Gluck called The Wild Iris, about transforming in a way that may be very useful at this time. Thank you very much, Keiki. Good to see all of you. Again, any more thoughts or observations you want to share? One more question. Good. I'm all ears. How do you see the world after this horrible time? Yes, a better world is definitely possible. I think that, remember Martin Luther King Jr.? Martin Luther King Jr. said that the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. The moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. And I can tweak that to say that the arc of the universe bends toward progress, towards enlightenment, toward love. And I think we will see in the future a lot of good things coming out of this. I don't claim to have a crystal ball about how society will improve or grow or benefit from this, but I think there will be more compassion. I think there has to be a world that's more compassionate to come out of this, whether that compassion means better healthcare, more accessible healthcare, or more love, more connection. We'll just have to wait and see. But I am optimistic that Martin Luther King Jr. was right, that the arc of the universe bends toward moral progress, spiritual progress, love, kindness. So yes, hang on to that optimistic view that with every downturn, there is always a positive result or consequence. And Susan says, maybe do this in the evening for people who are busy in the daytime. And I could perhaps do it in the evening also, or make the recording available for those who can listen to it later.
Well, we want to thank you so much, Dr. Allison, and thanks for everyone who's joined us today. I hope that you'll tune in for next week's programs, starting with a career services session on Monday, and that everyone enjoys the rest of their Friday and the weekend. We hope to see you soon, and in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and go spiders.